Hey, this is April 20th, 1983, and this is Joe Todd, an interview with Daisy Devine. Right.
Right.
Mrs. Devine, where were you born?
In Missouri,
When's your birthday?
20th of September.
What year?
Was I ain't gonna tell you how old. In 96. It's me 80, well, next birthday will be 87. I'm 86.
What part of Missouri were you born in?
Well, let me see my birthday.
Okay.
I've got my mother's old Bible there. I can't even see where it was. Oh, that's not it. My sister wanted this, but I don't know why.
This is Des.
Yeah, I know it. Now I know it, but I
Yeah.
didn't at the first.
This is Bert's.
That's it, isn't it? Birch Tree, Missouri.
Birch Tree, Missouri.
You know where that is?
No, ma'am.
Well, I think I believe it's southeast Missouri. South must have been west Missouri, cause it wasn't too far.
Okay, Southwest
Over
Missouri.
Here.
Anywhere close to Southwest City?
Not too far from there, I don't
Yeah,
think.
okay. Who was your father?
Sherman Nichols.
Was he from Missouri?
My mother too.
What was her name?
Ida Wadsworth.
Ida Wadsworth.
Wadsworth, W-A-D-S-W-R-T-H.
What kind of work did your father do?
He's a sawmill man.
Did he have a sawmill up at Birch Tree?
That's all he ever did. Well, he bought 40 acres down here, and we moved in 1906 down here at Wright Chapel, Southwestville. And then he sawmill there, and just go and get so many acres of timber, and then just go over there and saw it up.
How come he moved to Indian Territory?
Well, I don't know.
Do you remember the trip here?
Yeah, we came in a wagon.
Tell me about the trip. Tell me about the trip.
Well, I can't remember too much about it now. I was pretty young.
10 years old.
Well, after we got here, but
yeah,
I know we came in a wagon. And all of us slept in it because I was the second. I had a sister 18 months older than myself, and then a brother. There's 9 of us in family. And the ones in Texas now, he slept down in front of the what do you call it, spring seat and all. Of course, he had 2 beds on it, 2 high thing in the springs, and then everything was under that was our belongings. And
what kind of house do you live in Missouri?
well, my dad always built a house wherever he saw me on. Sometime it'd be just in a tent, and then it was sided up with the lumber, Then he'd move on somewhere else. But I don't know how come us to move, but on the way down here, I remember he got one of the horses kicked him on his leg. And he had a sore leg ever since I could remember, right here on his shin. And he was laid up for a few days with that. Of course, my mother took over and drove, and all. But I don't know how come us to come down.
What about fording the rivers?
Well, they just had made them where they forded them.
Did you?
No, we wasn't on no ferry.
No ferries, you just forded the rivers. Any trouble fording them?
Only one time when I got married, we came back here to the Western picnic, and it was up creek, or Illinois River. And we had a little team of mules. Well, they stopped right in the middle of that stream. We thought there we was gonna stay, but finally we got out. But, that's the only, that's before they had the bridges.
Did you start to school in Missouri?
No. Started here at Piney after we moved down
And what town did you move to in Indian Territory?
well, Westfield is south,
Just
about 5 miles south of.
what's the name of the
It's
town?
called Wright Chapel.
Wright Chapel.
Mm-hmm.
Who's it named after?
Well, the old Wright place. There was several of the Wrights there. It was an old timer.
Were they Cherokee?
Uh-huh. Yeah, they were Cherokee. Mm-hmm. His wife wasn't, but he was. Yeah. And they let them, well, all the neighbors, went together, and they let them have this little piece of land there to build this house on. I mean, just a one room. Of course, I went to school over at Piney, about 2 years, I guess it was. It was 1909 when we built the little schoolhouse here at Rice.
Where is Piney?
Piney, it's about 3 or 4 miles right on south of here.
Yeah.
South of West.
How big's Piney?
Oh, nothing. You wouldn't know it was Piney. It used to be, a long time ago, a man carried the mail on a horseback. Well, he had to, I guess, crossing the creek. And I don't know who was named Piney at that time, but the Adairs lived there then.
Did you know the Adairs?
Oh, yes, all of them.
What were they like, the Adairs?
They're just Cherokees. Like all of them, like all Cherokees.
What was the name of the school you started to?
Piney.
Piney School?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
How many years you go there?
2, I guess. 2 or 3, because, it was 1909 when we got the little school down here at Wright Chapel.
Wright Chapel?
Uh-huh.
Then you went to school there?
Uh-huh.
How many years?
Well, I graduated.
What year did you graduate?
I can't remember. It's been too long, as old as I am, but I never went to high school or anywhere else, just the grade school, 8th grade. Hate to tell all that.
What kind of chores you do around the farm?
Oh, I helped my dad. My brother was younger than I, and he made the boy out of me. I helped run the sawmill all the time.
How was the sawmill run? What power?
How was it run?
Yeah. What ran the blade?
Oh, steam engine. You never saw a sawmill?
Well, yeah, not one back then though.
Well, you cut those little slabs off and you make wood out of them and fire this boiler, and it's run by steam and all these belts and everything.
How big is the blade?
Oh, it's that big around. You cut big logs.
3 or 4 feet in diameter?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. More than 3 feet. Yes, it's big.
How'd your father cut the trees?
They just cut them with a crosscut saw.
Did you
Two of us, one got on one end.
Did you help do that too?
Uh-huh.
How'd you select the trees to cut?
Well, he knew what to cut, it made good saw lumber.
What kind of trees you cut?
We cut all kinds, oak and pine and, sycamore, anything that was available. But most everybody wanted for their framing was oak.
Mm-hmm. Which was the easiest tree to cut?
Oh, pine was.
It was?
Pine's kind of softwood,
Which was the hardest tree to cut?
Oak, some oak. I don't know what you call them, but there's several different kinds of oak.
What, white oak?
White oak, black oak, and red oak, and red oak grew the largest, I think.
How'd you get the trees from the woods to the sawmill?
On a wagon. We called it a log wagon.
How big was it?
Oh, it was just like any other wagon, only it had big tires, iron tires on it,
That'd be a pretty good sized wagon to carry those big trees, didn't it?
Oh, yes, it was pretty good. Well, it's just, I guess, a common wagon, only it was heavier built.
I mean,
know.
did you carry the trees or drag the trees?
You drag the tree out till you got to the wagon. And then they had them chains, that rolled them up, skids, and rolled them up on the wagon.
How'd you drag the tree to the wagon?
And drive the logs.
No, how'd you drag the log to the wagon?
Uh-huh.
How'd you do that?
Oh, how? With the team.
Horse or oxen?
Horses. Oh, we didn't have, we never saw any oxen.
You have mules?
Huh?
You have mules?
Mules and good horses.
Which is the best to work with, horses or mules?
I don't know, my dad had both.
Yeah. And how far out did you go to cut the trees from the sawmill?
Well, you just went where we could drive with the wagon, and pretty close, and then cut the trees, and then you'd go back and drag them down to the wagon.
Did he have to pay the landowner for the trees, or how did he arrange with the...
Yeah, when, if he bought the timber off of someone, he did. But I can't remember how much he paid or anything like that.
Now how...
But people wanted their land cleared up,
Yeah.
Cut the timber.
How do you cut a log into lumber? I have no idea.
You don't know?
How do you do that?
You put this on the wagon, bring it to the sawmill, and you have skids there, big long ones here, big logs, and you roll that off on those. That rolls down to the, what do you call it? I can't even tell. To the carriage. Is that what it is? Never heard of that.
It's a carriage that the log sits on?
It was a long, just like it had wheels on it and all, and my dad had pushed this lever. And that carriage would go through right up here and hit the saw. And I set ratchets for him. And you'd
Set ratchets?
You'd push it over 1 inch or 2 inches or whatever this was, to
For
get
the thickness of the board?
thickness of the board. If you want 2 bys, it'd be 2 inches, and and so on.
What's the biggest log you could saw?
Can't remember that. I remember we sawed some big ones, but the saw wouldn't hardly go through. You'd have to turn them over, to cut the outside, just trim it a little bit, and then turn it down on the flat side, and then it'd be, it could go through easier.
Did you have planes to plane the
No,
lumber
we didn't
down?
have any plane. No. It's all rough lumber.
What about drying the lumber? Did you have a dryer?
No, we didn't. No. They just come, the people that put in their order, like they're building a big barn or something. They give you their order, and then we'd saw that out, and they'd come and get it, haul it off to where they were building.
What was the price for lumber?
About 3.5, 100.
$3.50 a 100 board feet?
100 board feet. 3 and 3.5. I know there's a big barn up here, like going to Westville. This man was a big farmer. Oh, it's a huge barn now, it's still standing. My dad sewed that lumber. That's been years and years and years ago.
How was the sawmill set up? Was it in a tent, in the building? Was it just on the
No,
outside?
it was out in the open.
Just out in the open? And had a steam engine?
Had steam,
Where
yeah.
it ran by steam?
Oh, yeah. This big boiler, great big boiler. And as I told you, they fired it by those slabs, wood to heat it up. You got so much steam, then you're ready to saw. I forget just how much.
Where was the sawmill located?
Well, we had one there at Wright Chapel. And then one on up the creek, 4 or 5 miles up, right up Barron Creek.
So you had more than
My
one?
dad sewed, no, He moved the mill up there.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when you cut an area out, you move the sawmill? Okay.
Yeah. A lot of times people would haul logs in to saw their lumber up, you know.
How big was that boiler, the steam engine?
Ooh, it was huge.
How'd you move it?
Well, it had, you move it by team, or some of them was set up just when they thrashed, just like those kind of engines were, you know, whatever, called engine boiler all together. And they had wheels on them, iron wheels.
Did yours have wheels?
Huh?
Did yours have wheels?
I don't believe this one did. We had just stationary one.
How'd you pick it up then to move it?
We didn't pick it up. He just moved it on a wagon, one of those big wagons, you know. It's like you'd move logs on, haul a log.
How long did your father operate that sawmill?
Well, until he left here in 1915.
1950?
That's when I married.
And you worked the sawmill up till then?
Yeah.
What was the worst part about working in a sawmill?
Oh, I didn't know it was any worse part. It was good, that's all we ever knew.
Was it dangerous?
Yes, it was. One of them blew up and killed a boy. Steam, you know, I guess they didn't know how to work it or something, but if you didn't watch the steam gauge, you know, you get too much steam.
Was that your sawmill that blew up?
Well, he had sold it. My dad had sold it long before that. But this,
Any accidents in the saw blade?
yeah, my uncle got his 2 fingers cut off. You get too close to that saw and it'd make 90 miles an hour. He had leather gloves on. Caught those gloves, you know.
What was your main job in the sawmill?
Oh, I just did everything. Mostly setting ratchets.
That was moving the log over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Why do they call that setting ratchets?
I don't know.
Is that operated by steam too?
No, it's hand operated.
Hand
You pull this lever here, you know, and that pulls your log over. When it was flat, you just push it over 1 inch or 2 inch or whatever, you know. You saw that up.
Those logs are hard to move though, aren't they?
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't.
No, it wasn't. It was just slick iron, you know.
Yeah.
Slide right over.
Did this lever move?
Yeah.
I mean, what actually moved the log? Did
Well, it was this lever, I guess.
yeah, it looked like it'd be awful hard to move a big log over by a lever.
It wasn't. I don't know how it was made, but then
Yeah.
that's how we moved it.
What did you like most about the sawmill?
What did I?
Yeah.
I don't know. Just enjoyed everything about it. So we saw up all of our, we saw out our bills, you know, of lumber somebody gave us, and maybe we got through that evening or that week in, and we saw out enough lumber to haul to Westville to the lumber yards to buy our groceries. My dad took 2 loads that bought our groceries. A lot of people didn't have that. They didn't have a dime, you know, on the farm. And they'd borrow from us because we had bought our groceries.
Yeah. How many board feet could you cut in a day?
I can't remember that. I just don't remember that. We had no amount.
Yeah. Was your father the biggest sawman in this area?
Was around here. Yes, he was.
Did the Depression of 1907 affect you?
We know anything about it. 1907. Because we had nothing before that. We didn't know, you know, just everybody mostly was on an equal.
Yeah. Did you move the sawmill from Missouri down here?
No. Mm-mm. Don't worry about this summer. But
Do
we had
you-
one over in Arkansas before we moved over here.
Oh, you went to Arkansas first.
Uh-huh. Stayed there a little while though, before we moved over here.
What part of Arkansas?
Well, not far over, not in Arkansas. This side of Summers, just over there.
Do you remember Statehood Day?
I remember statehood, that's the year, you know, we were living here.
Yeah, 1907.
About 1907.
Was there a big
moved in 1906.
Yeah. Was there a big celebration around here?
Oh yeah, not now, but there were, you know.
I know. When
Yeah.
it became a state in 1907, what was that day like?
I couldn't tell any difference. Myself, of course, we were just all kids, you know. But I've never saw as much. See, we lived right up the creek here. Barron Creek's right down there. And I went to, I can't remember where now. But anyway. The Indians, we were kind of afraid of them at that time because, you know, we never saw any of the full bloods.
Yeah. What were the Indians like?
Well, like anyone else, but they done a lot of drinking.
Where'd they get their whiskey?
Huh?
Where'd they get their whiskey?
Over Summers. They didn't have here in Oklahoma. How come? At that time, it wasn't. Weren't states.
Was it bootleg whiskey or what?
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Well, they'd go to Summers and get it to come on the train to Summers, Arkansas. And they'd come down that hollow by our house. They all had a gallon jug on their shoulder with a leather strap, you know, on. A gallon jug, I guess, is pretty heavy. And then, of course, they drank all along.
Who was the biggest bootlegger around here?
Oh, I don't remember the bootleggers, no.
When you first came
Just
to...
everybody had their own.
Yeah. When you first came to Indian territory, were the Indians prejudiced against the whites?
Not too much, and not with us. I didn't hear them say much
What about in school? Did the Indians and whites all go to the same school?
about it. Mm-hmm. Sure did.
What about the kids? Did they show any prejudice or anything toward the whites?
Not like it is now.
Yeah.
My sister married an Indian, a Harlan. Lived up pretty close to the Arkansas line. And my husband was Cherokee. But we didn't think anything about it.
Yeah. Did you ever know anyone that came on the Trail of Tears?
I've heard people talk about it.
What'd they say about it?
Oh, just what a hard time they had.
Did they tell of any particular incidents that happened or stories?
No, I didn't remember it.
Were the Indians still bitter or have hard feelings about the removal when you were a child? Did they ever talk about that?
No.
Who were some of the Indians that you knew?
Hmm.
Who were some of the Indians that you knew?
Well, I knew all the Wrights and the Harlans and the Crittendens, and most of them was kin to us.
Were they all
Maybe that's the
Cherokee?
reason we came. I don't know.
Yeah. Were they all Cherokee?
Uh-huh. Now, John don't look like an Indian, does he? That's the way my husband was. He didn't. But those that got, of course, John wasn't old enough to get his land, but my husband did.
Where was your husband's allotment?
It's south of Westville.
How far?
Not too far, 3 or 4 miles.
What's your husband's name?
Jack Devine. I think you have something in there about Tom Devine was his daddy. Tom and Molly. Molly was his mother.
What was her maiden name?
Huh?
What was her maiden name?
Keith,
Were they from?
K-I-T.
They were from Indian Territory then, weren't they?
No, I don't think she was. Now, this is mostly Oklahoma, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is from
Right.
Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm. When you were going to school, what kind of games did you play?
Well, we played jump the rope. We'd go down the woods and get a grapevine.
Get a grapevine. What did you do with it?
Grow in the woods. You didn't know anything about that, did you? Just a grapevine would grow in the woods, and it'd just be right about that big around, and this limber. Got a great long one, bring it back and throw that. It's good to jump the rope.
Oh, that's
jump the grapevine.
Mm-hmm.
And then we played ball and all things like that, One old boy over there, Piney, he was, I don't know if he's still living or not. He's older than I am, I know, because he's grown when I went to school. I'd bump heads with him, we'd be playing ball and everybody running,
Mm-hmm.
And he had a hard head. But
what was his name?
this boy was Bill Catcher. Bill Catcher.
Bill Catcher?
Yeah. I don't know if he's still living now. But they had a chart in the corner of the school house. You saw charts.
Yeah.
It was a huge one. Had to be big as men, grown men.
Yeah.
was going. They'd turn one of those leaves over, and say, well, that's A, Bill. And he'd say, that's A, Bill. That's B, and that's O, or, just like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now these babies like this know more than grown-ups did then when we went to school.
Mm-hmm. How much land did your father have? Did he buy land here?
He just got 40 acres.
Was that after the Dawes Commission came through? And
Yeah, I guess it was.
Mm-hmm. Did you raise any crops there?
Oh, yeah.
What'd you raise?
We had it clear, just corn back there,
Mm-hmm.
Corn and cane. And, well, whatever.
I cut myself shaving this. Okay. What year did you graduate? Do you remember?
No, I'm too old.
Let's see. Where'd you meet your husband?
Well, everybody used to have singings and get together in church,
Mm-hmm.
It's where I met him. We'd have pie supper and everything else. Can't remember, because he was my cousin a long time before I ever met him.
Did you raise any cotton on your place?
No, we raised 2 or 3 acres of cotton one time.
Yeah.
Bush.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. What was the main crop you grew on your farm?
Well, it's mostly corn.
Mostly corn.
Mm-hmm.
Raise
My
any,
dad fed that to his mules and horses,
you raise any stock, any cattle or hogs or anything?
Just milk cows and hogs. Oh, we always butchered several hogs.
Mm-hmm. Did you help butcher?
Huh?
Did you help butcher?
No, I didn't do that. My brother did, though, younger than I. He
Did
was
you?
good.
Did you make head cheese?
Yeah.
How do you
My
make
mother
that?
did.
How do you make head cheese?
I never did make them much.
What about the laundry?
Oh, we just washed in a tub and on the rugboard.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't know that kind of laundry, did you?
How'd you do it? Tell me how you did the laundry.
Huh?
Tell me how you did the laundry from start to finish.
Most of the time we went down to the branch. We had a spring branch. Had a big black kettle down there, you know. I knew always pick a pretty day though, like this, or warmer, or I don't know how we done in the winter time. But anyway, they would heat this kettle with a bunch of water, you know, and heat it, and then fill your tubs and put your clothes in there and soak them, rubbed them on this rub board, and then put them in that big black kettle and boiled them. They were sterilized then, not like today. Took them out and rinsed them a couple of times and hung them out.
What about soap?
Yeah, now a lot of people made their soap, but my mother didn't. I don't know how come she didn't make homemade soap.
You had store-bought soap.
Mm-hmm.
What kind? What brand did you use?
P&G.
P&G.
Big white bars, about that big.
What's your favorite childhood memory?
I can't remember that. We always had parties and sayings, and of course people didn't do like they do today, you know. And, play parties. And my dad was a musician. He played the violin, play any musical instrument he picked out. And he bought me a organ, a piano later, and he taught me to second after him, you know, when he played. And then we'd have music parties, and there'd big crowds come to our house, you know. And that's the way it was.
Yeah.
Just had entertain, make candy and popcorn and balls and whatnot.
What about hay rides? Have hay rides?
Yeah, we have a lot of times.
Where'd you go on a hay ride?
Oh, not very far. Not very far. Our roads wasn't very good. We were way up high, you know. We piled it up so high, and then we went down. He was driving, and we went down this little ditch this way. We both went off and lost the hay too.
What year did you get married?
15.
1915. You get married here in Westville?
It was the next day after the Westville picnic. Everybody went to the Westville picnic. And it was on a Sunday after the Westville picnic. We went to Piney. We rented this livery stable up here in town.
Mm-hmm.
They had horses and buggies.
Yeah.
We had just 2 horses to a buggy, and when we went in Burren Creek, see, there's no bridges. No, in Burren Creek, it's always clear. We just went way almost under. And
Who married you?
Bob Fields, Justice of the Peace over Piney.
Can you give me a good description of Wright Chapel and Piney, what the towns look like?
There wasn't no town.
It was
Just a building, just a schoolhouse.
Oh, so it's just a schoolhouse with just houses around it. There was no business district.
No.
How many people lived in each community? Wright City, Wright
Not
Chapel?
very well. There's 33 in this. They first started a school, Wright Chapel, after they built the building.
Mm-hmm.
Just 33. My cousins, there's a big family of those that lived up. He was another sawmill man. I'll take that back. He sawmill too. Uncle Bill Nelson. And there's as many of them as there was of us, about 5 or 6 to go in each family. But the Choates had that many, so about 3 families. Didn't take more than 4 or 5 families to make the school up, you know.
Mm-hmm. When's the first time you came to Westville?
I don't remember that.
What was your
First time.
What's your first memory of Westville?
Well, we wasn't down there very long until we had to come to town, to buy groceries.
What did the town look like, Westville?
Well, I think it is larger than it is now,
Mm-hmm.
which is not very much, But I believe we had 2 banks there.
The streets paved?
I don't believe there were. I don't know. It could be.
Mm-hmm. Did Mr. Devine go to World War One?
No, they're just ready to call it at that time,
Did you and your husband do any work for the war effort during the war?
No. He was a disabled person for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
He had heart trouble and high blood pressure.
What kind of work did he do?
He carpenter.
And when you got married, where'd y'all move to?
Well, we moved not very far from Wright Chapel, up on the hill where his dad and mother lived. And then we went to Commerce, Oklahoma, and he worked in the mines,
Mm-hmm.
lead and jack mine in Commerce.
Okay, did you moved up on the hill? Was that his folks' allotment?
Mm-hmm.
Then when did you move to Commerce?
Well, we moved right after we got married. Still in 15, I guess.
What'd your husband do in the mines?
He was I don't know what you do down. I went down with them one time. I don't know how many 100 feet. With him in the can, just dropped. Of course, they had their light on their cap, all like that. And they filled this big can up full of the dirt down there, I believe he didn't do the shoot. He didn't do. I believe that's what he did. Shot those rock in there, Put
the explosives?
I don't know what it was, but anyway, that's when they'd put off a shot, and then of course they'd all run back to let it blow out, and then they would come with they had a wagon under there. Well, it was a thing that rolled on wheels and had a track, and they filled that full of
like an ore car?
And they'd fill that with lead and jack, the debris down there.
Mm-hmm.
And they took it out with those cans, like when we came down. Like my husband, everybody rode their cans down to the bottom.
What was the name of the mine?
I can't remember. It was their Commerce. I forget the name of them. The one he worked in, really.
Mm-hmm. How long did he work in the mines?
Too long. We had lung trouble,
Oh, you get lung trouble there too, just like the coal mines?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What kind of lung trouble?
That lead and jack, you breathe that and it got into your lungs.
Lead and jack?
Lead.
What's jack?
Jack it looked more like gold in them little rocks. It wasn't that, called lead and jack mines.
Mm-hmm.
But the lead was, of course, different to the jack. It showed up. Looked pretty in those rocks,
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, that was run through the mills up there. Haven't you ever been up there and saw those lead mines and jack mines?
I've been in the Nancy Jane mine. Are those mines still operating?
I don't think they are.
What was your husband's title in the mines? Do you know?
What was?
What was your husband's title? Was he just a miner, or did he have a specific name for what he did?
No, I can't remember. I know They just put in those shots, and shoot that out, and I forgot what they call that. Of course, he never done no lift put them in them buckets, or I mean, that cart or whatever it was. He just done the shooting.
Were there any mine explosions there, or mine cave-ins?
Was several killed there.
There were? Was your husband ever trapped inside the mine anytime?
Never what?
Was your husband ever trapped inside the mine at any time? Do you ever hear of the Indian going snake?
Mm-hmm.
Who was he?
Mm-hmm. I didn't know him. I said I didn't live very far from what they were trying to do at Going Snake, but he was just a man, they said, over here close north of town a little way.
What did he do, going snake?
No. What did he?
What kind of homes did the average Cherokee live in?
Homes.
Yeah. What kind of houses?
Mostly little log shacks, with a built two side room. Maybe just one room, because of just the logs, enough to build one room.
What kind of home was your husband raised in?
Well, his dad and him both was carpenters, and they built their own homes, Well, they were good sized homes.
Did your father build your house there on the property? You said he always built a house where he had his sawmill.
He had it built.
How big was it?
Oh, that's good size. It was a story and a half high for many of us, But I don't know who built it, really. I can't remember. He just had to help.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
Me?
Yeah.
There was 9 of us.
9.
5 boys and 4 girls.
And you lived in Commerce up in the 1920s?
Well, we didn't stay there about 2 or 3 years.
That's all?
My first baby was born up there. She lives up here now in the field, this one.
Yeah.
Call home right up here.
Did you come back down here then?
Yeah, we moved to, yeah. We from here.
What'd you do after you moved back down here?
Just like, just done a little bit of farming around this truck patches, he done carpenter work for people.
How did the Depression affect you and your family?
I couldn't tell too much difference. We all lived. It's pretty hard. I could remember them talking about it, but.
Can you tell me what kind of meals he fixed during those years in the Depression? You just had the same type of meal you always had, or did you do anything different during the hard times?
Well, as I said, I couldn't tell when the Depression came, really, with us.
So it didn't
just
affect
about
you?
the same.
Yeah, it didn't affect you that much then? Because you raised a lot of your own food?
Most of it, what we ate and put up,
Did many people around here go to California?
I think they did.
Oh, let me regress. I was going to ask about the flu epidemic of 1918.
Yeah, he lost a brother.
Were you living in Commerce, or were you back down here then?
Well, he was living up there, this brother. There's 2 or 3 of them went up there. See, there's 5 boys. That's all what they had. My husband's the youngest. There's Wadey and Joe and Jim and Bill and Jack. My husband's Jack. And Jim was the one that passed away up there. No, Joe Devine. He had pneumonia with that flu, Just went like that.
Did any of your family have the flu? Did any of your family have the flu?
We didn't have it bad. not like so many. There's a lot of them, whole families died with it.
Did you help doctor anyone?
Just our own family.
Yeah. What kind of medicines do they use for the flu?
Just made their own cough medicine.
What did they make it out of?
Well, wild cherry bark and I don't know, mullein and whatnot.
What's mullein?
Well, see it growing around. I couldn't make it now. I couldn't find it. Wild cherry was good for the cough, though.
Wild cherry. Is that like plum or what? Is it like plums or cherries? Or?
No. Well, it has cherry, little cherries on it, but it's wild cherry bark is what we use, you know.
Why, do you boil it? Or
boil it down, boil it and get the, you know, get whatever syrup like, and then boil that down, put sugar in, boil that down. Made a syrup out of it.
Mm-hmm.
When we left here, my dad, before I married though, he went to Locust Grove. And we had we moved in what do you call it, a wagon train. There's about 5 or 6 wagons, with covered wagons, you know, went to Locust Grove. That was the year I got married. We had 2 wagons and teams, good ones, and then a mare, a pretty pony with a buggy. She pulled a buggy. My brother, he's living now out here, Seminole.
How come you went to? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, he had a little old calf, or heifer, grown heifer. We were taking her along. He carried lunches to the sawmill on her. He'd have a big water bucket full of food. You know, everybody had to feed their own people then, the ones that worked for them. And he just taking her along with him, and she went all that many miles from here to Locust Grove.
How far is Locust Grove?
Oh, I don't know. You don't know where Locust is?
I'm not sure how far it is.
33 highway.
I'm not sure how far it is.
I don't know.
How come y'all went to Locust Grove?
I don't know that either. How come I didn't? But anyway, we went in that 4 or 5 wagons, and our neighbors went with us. It was in March, and of course you couldn't buy bread, you know. I remember we went, when we left here, sat in a brush pile of bark somewhere. My mother cooked our meal on that. Then we stayed in a house that night, and it was a vacant house. It had 2 fireplaces. We just put down our beds, made them in the floor. And it took us 2 or 3 days to get to Locust. Of course, you don't go very fast in a wagon, you know.
Did you know your grandparents?
Mm-mm. Never knew my mother and father's parents. I knew my father's parents. My mother's parents I never did know. They lived in Missouri.
Yeah.
But he was a well-to-do old gentleman. He had an interest in the gold mine in Crook, Colorado. You know, people just didn't get together. They had no way back there, no telephone or nothing, you know. Were
either of your grandfathers in the Civil War?
Huh? I don't know. No, I know my grandfather on the Nichols side wasn't, but the others I don't know.
Yeah. Well, do you remember Armistice Day?
Do what?
Armistice Day, when World War
Yeah.
I ended.
Mm-hmm.
What was that day like?
Oh, I can't remember, but I remember hearing that, on the radio and everything, and it really exciting. But not too much difference, only just a bunch of people got together.
There big celebrations or? Was there many WPA projects in this area?
Oh, yes.
What kind of
Yeah,
projects?
that's all in the world of world, then. My husband was, he's, what do you call it, kind of a,
Foreman or?
yeah, foreman up there.
What did he do?
Oh, he just kept time, I guess, people went out to work.
What project did he work on?
We lived at Wright Chapel at that time, part of the time. And then we lived at Barron. We had a grocery store down there. And there was one man, who'd been trading with us. I remember that very well. And we'd see him pass every morning with his lunch pail. Come to find out, and he's getting groceries all the time. Come to find out, he wasn't working any. he just, that was the alibi he had, See him go by, well, this guy's working, He wasn't.
What kind of projects did your husband work with?
Oh, they worked in building schools, with the rock quarries. And on the highway, on the county roads and whatnot, there's a lot of.
What about CCC projects? The Civilian Conservation Corps?
Yeah, I've been to those places, but we didn't have it here. My husband wasn't into it. Remember going over in Arkansas where they had all those buildings and towers and everything, and the buildings were built out of the timber they had, back in the woods.
Did you do any work for the war effort in World War II?
Did I?
Yeah.
No. Only it was, if there's something that was needed to be done, I did, but no big deal.
Did I ask what your favorite childhood memory was?
Yeah, you did, but I can't remember. I was always just a tomboy, just worked and helped my dad, and my sister, just older than I, she did our housework, and I don't like to do it today.
Who were some of the prominent people in Westville when you were a child?
Oh, yeah. Everybody's kind of on an equal, I thought. Bill Jones was I think his name is Bill or not, but he was the banker here, one of them, Jones.
Who was the mayor?
I don't know if we had a mayor. I don't remember.
Did you ever know of anyone that went to the Sequoia Convention?
Sequoia. No.
Are you familiar with it? The Sequoia Convention?
No.
That was held in Muskogee to make Indian Territory the state of Sequoia.
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah,
19.
But I didn't know.
Ever meet Charles Haskell?
No.
Ever meet Charles Haskell?
No.
He was the first governor of Oklahoma. from Muskogee.
I ought to know that, but I'm not familiar with him.
How many kids do you have?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
2 girls.
How many grandkids?
2.
2. Great grandkids?
No,
Nope.
don't have any. The oldest daughter's born in Commerce. She lives right up there. The other one lives close to Seminole.
Mm-hmm.
Her husband works in he pumps wells out there. He has cattle and lives on a ranch. And the oldest grandson, he's a teacher up at the General Motors, Oklahoma City. He's been working there ever since they built that plant.
Have you been to a sawmill today? A modern sawmill?
I don't know who has one.
Of course, the biggest one's down at Wright City.
Huh?
The biggest one's down at Wright City, southeast Oklahoma.
Oh, it is. Right.
They cut something like 150,000 board feet a day.
Oh, Lord, I'd like to see that. Yeah, I love the timber.
How many people did your father have working for him in the sawmill?
Not very many. Maybe 3 or 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
But he said he'd rather have me when I got old enough to work as any man he could hire on the setting ratchet.
Yeah.
Of course, I wasn't that old, you know, at the beginning, when he hired those men. But
Mm-hmm. Well,
been a long time since I was little, though.
Yeah. What else you want to talk about?
I don't know.
What was your first impression of the Indians?
Well, I was afraid of them when we first came here.
How come?
Well, there's all drinking. They drink all their life, I wonder.
Mm.
It surely didn't hurt them like it does today. They didn't have other dope to take, you know, just mostly, I guess, just this good corn liquor, they called it. I went one time over, called it Flats Distillery, and I don't know more, couldn't go nowhere where it was now than nothing. But I went with someone over there, and it was my dad or who. But I remember seeing them big vats, you know, boiling up there with that crust on it. They had dippers there. You just rake that back and get you a dipper full. That was the mash, I guess you call it, you know. But that's been many a year ago.
Do you have any Indian recipes?
No. Mm-mm.
What about gathering wild greens? Do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
What do you gather?
Just anywhere I find them.
What do you gather?
It's kochani, poke, and wild mustard, and wild lettuce.
What's the first one you mentioned?
Kochani.
What's that?
Well, it's just grows up in the bottoms, barren bottoms, and all around where it's lowland, you know. That's Indian dish, Indian weed, greens, or whatever you call it.
What are some of the Indian dishes?
I guess skin corn, hominy, and things like that, you know.
Well, I think we have a good interview.
You think so?
Do you have any old photographs of your family?
Let's see. I don't know what I did. No, he used to be with him a lot, Dick Proctor.
Who's your father? Oh, your
Tom Devine.
Tom Devine.
Mm-hmm.
What was the story about Zeke Proctor?
Oh, Lordy, I wouldn't know. Too many can tell it that I can't. And what I did all my pictures, so.
Who is in this picture that you know?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I know all of them. This is a little teacher. She lived with us.
What's her name?
Eula Ellis. She's dead now. She had a heart attack.
Name is Ellis.
Uh-huh.
What's her first name?
Eula.
Eula.
Mm-hmm.
E-U-L.
Hey. Now this was the first Michigan, that one is.
What, the deer?
Yeah. First trip they made to Michigan, drilled the first deep oil well up there in Michigan. Where the son-in-law did.
Did your husband do any work in the oil fields here at all?
No.
Was there ever an oil boom around this part of the country?
Not any here. Seminole, my brothers, all five of them worked at Seminole, and they had the oil boom up there.
They did. Any of your brothers still living?
Just two of them.
Where do they live?
Seminole.
What are their names?
Huh?
What are their names?
Herman Nichols, and Cecil, though, is down in Texas.
And Herman Nichols lives in Seminole?
Uh-huh.
And he worked in the oil fields?
Oh, yeah. He was there during the boom.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you.
H-A-R-L-A-N.
They were Cherokee?
Yeah. Yes, they were. His mother was full-blood. But his dad was a nighthawk. He wouldn't, they just allotted their land around where they wanted to when they got older, he wouldn't go get their land or whatever you do. I don't know.
Is this Eli here?
Yeah, that's it. That's my cousin, Slate. He worked for my dad. So Slayton.